Hello and welcome to this edition of Recitals. We'll be discussing social issues in depth. And the main themes we are discussing today are education, SDG index, health and agriculture. NCERT's new report cards to track post-school plans and life skills. The NCERT has launched a new holistic report card which is going to track children's progress in a much more holistic way. So let us discuss this in greater detail. Now, the National Assessment Center, NCERT actually started off something called PARAKH. This is Performance Assessment Review and Analysis of Knowledge for Holistic Development. This was set up by NCERT as an independent body in 2023. Now, the objective was to fulfill the basic objectives, setting norms, standards, guidelines, and implementing activities related to student assessment along with tasks as mandated by the National Education Policy of 2020. So, this is a new development that has happened, and let us discuss this in greater detail. Now, the National Council of Educational Research and Training, that is NCERT, selected ETS to set up PARAKH for India's first national assessment regulator. Now, ETS is a global private testing body, and many people are aware of this as the organization that conducts a variety of examinations like TOEFL, GRE and others. Now, ETS is going to be paid about 30 crores over a period of 3 years, and ETS itself is headquartered in New Jersey. And ETS is going to have a very, very large impact on the Indian education system because they're going to practically cover every aspect of policy making on evaluations and assessments in India. So, this is a pretty large mandate that has been given to ETS, but ETS is a well regarded, globally acclaimed body. So, India thought that we can use the services of ETS. Now, ATS will also be in charge of developing strategic partnerships and collaboration with other public and private institutions, including non-profit organizations and non-profit institutions. Now, what are the objectives of PARAKH? First is uniform norms and guidelines, setting norms, standards and guidelines for student assessment and evaluation for all recognized schools and boards across India. Now, what happens right now is each state board has its own way of doing things. So, the marks that are obtained in one particular state board, we really don't know how to compare it to another state board. So, there's always this idea that this particular state board is difficult, this particular state board is easy, or maybe ICSE is difficult for this subject, or CBSE is difficult for this subject. That kind of an idea is there. So, now the idea is that ETS will help, PARAKH is going to ensure that there will be uniform norms and guidelines to ensure that the educational standards and educational, evaluations would be comparable across the entire country. Now, the second one is enhanced assessment patterns. It will encourage and help school boards to shift their assessment patterns towards meeting the skill requirements of the 21st century. Now, if you pay attention to the education system in our country, the way examination patterns have been set up, they have largely remained the way things were, say, 50 years ago or 70 years ago, especially where schools are still following an annual pattern. Many colleges and universities have shifted to semester pattern, practically everybody has, and there are places where you even have trimester patterns. So, that actually helps better evaluations, better all-round development, and also it helps students learn better. So, that is maybe one thing that will happen in the future. The second is reduce disparity in evaluations. It will bring uniformity across the state boards and central boards, which currently follow, like I said, different evaluation patterns. And benchmark assessments. The benchmark assessment framework will seek to put an end to the emphasis on rote learning. Right now, the way education system happens is children are given subjects, children are given material, and they just have to mug it up and they have to put it out in an examination. So, the idea is that you move away from that and end up in a situation where you will be able to apply the knowledge that has been imparted to you. Now, there are four major areas of focus for PARAKH: capacity development in competency, the competency-based assessment, that's Project Vidyasagar. PARAKH, in partnership with the PhD Chamber of Commerce, is organizing workshops across the country to familiarize educators with the new pedagogical methods and the policy that is going to be implemented. Goal is to bridge the gaps in implementing competency-based learning and teaching. Now, what are the, like I said, there are four areas where PARAKH is going to do. Large-scale achievement survey, this is going to be done. PARAKH conducted the State Educational Achievement Survey in November 2023, assessing students in grades 3, 6 and 9 across 30 states and union territories. This survey assesses educational competencies in foundational literacy, numeracy, language and mathematics. The other was equivalence of school boards. PARAKH is working to standardize, like I said, the school boards so that they can be compared and there can be some kind of uniformity in terms of the quality of education that's imparted and the way students are evaluated. And the other is regional workshops were conducted, were held across the country to collect data. And the fourth task was holistic progress cards, which is our focus today. Now, about holistic progress cards, the holistic progress cards will no longer depend on marks or grades to evaluate a student's academic performance. Right now, the way education happens in the country is we completely focus on just the results in an examination. You are given a certain amount of information, you have to learn it, and in one single day, in a probably 2.5 to 3 hour period, you'll be evaluated for that. And if you can perform well, that's it. Otherwise, an entire year is wasted. It's not really the most scientific way of evaluating a child's learning or even a basic information that has been obtained by the child or even their own intelligence. It doesn't really explore the many facets of learning a child has actually achieved over a period of a year. Now, the holistic holistic progress cards, they're going to do a 360-degree evaluation of the child. Now, under the model, the students will be regularly assessed through classroom activities where they're not just passive learners but active agents. Now, one of the most important things that happens in the country is students are not really encouraged to ask questions in the classroom. They are just forced to learn something in a class. The teacher gives out notes, you mug it, you put it out in your examination and you're through. That doesn't really help develop the intellectual capabilities of a child. So, we want the country to shift away from the situation where children are just passive learners to active agents of learning. You know, it's your own mind developing. So, you want the child to be involved in it. Now, these activities will prompt students to apply diverse skills and competencies to demonstrate whether they have understood the concepts or not. This is not really tested right now. We really don't know if a child has completely understood a concept or not, or is able to even apply it. All we want to know is there will be a question. Can you answer that question or not? Now, we want to move away from that model. Now, what is the significance of this? It will act as a common platform for the interaction of all concerned stakeholders. The holistic progress cards, that methodology is going to act as a platform for interaction of all concerned stakeholders. It will further help in developing a holistic approach that ensures a fair assessment system. Right now, the assessment system is not really fair. All we are focusing is on the 2.5 to 3 hour period during which a child is assessed. But whereas a child has probably, say somebody has a fever or somebody has a cold, you're not really able to work for those, your mind is not working for those 3 hours, you may fail. So, that's not really fair. So, the idea is to move towards a system that has a more, that is a fair assessment of the child and promotes equity in performance and equivalence in student assessment. So, over a year, there is a 360-degree assessment of the child, and that allows the child to perform over an entire year instead of just a small examination. Now, it will reassess the prevailing rote learning culture, like I said, in India's education system, emphasize that multiple dimensions of a student's abilities and potential are equally important for the overall education of a child. Like I said, it will strike a balance between formative and summative assessments. It will further reduce the burden of high stakes examinations and effectively measure a student's progress. So, this is what a holistic progress card is going to do. Now, PARAKH would assess the issue of students of some state boards being at a disadvantage during college examinations as against the students of CBSE schools. Like I said, this has been an ongoing concern for many years, and this is one of the tasks that PARAKH is going to undertake, and is going to actually hopefully come up with a good solution. And holistic cards would be one way of really tackling this problem. It will bring uniformity among different boards and reduce wide disparities. PARAKH will mark a progressive shift towards a more scientific approach to education. PARAKH would cater to the needs of the education, covering aspects like cognitive development of the child and physical and social development. Now, what are the features of the holistic progress cards? The difficulty level they experience while performing a task will also be assessed, which is actually where you can see a complete shift in the way things are going to be done in the coming years. Teachers will be able to register the strengths of a student, such as their ability to collaborate, follow instructions, show creativity or empathy. Now, empathy is a very important aspect of a human personality, but it's not a part of our education system anywhere in the world. Empathy and compassion are probably the most important aspects of our human personality. In fact, if we look at it in scientific terms, one of the reasons human beings have successfully, taken over the entire planet is primarily because of our capability to empathize and be compassionate towards the members of our groups. So, but we don't really teach that. So, this new method will actually bring that into the education system. Now, similarly, weaknesses like lack of education, peer pressure, lack of preparation will help teachers identify where students need help. Like peer pressure is a problematic area, how a child is undergoing a lot of pressure from that. Teachers are unaware and they are not actually able to even take care of that effectively. The HPC allows students to evaluate their own and their classmates' performances. So, the child is also going to evaluate their own learning and how the other students are learning. So, that actually helps a better understanding of the entire learning process. Additionally, it connects home and school by incorporating parents' input on their child's homework abilities, classroom engagement and balancing screen time with extracurricular activities. This approach makes parents an integral part of the child's learning process. Now, that small part of it is going to have a few problems, especially when we enter areas of education where you have first generation learners or children coming from educationally and economically deprived backgrounds. It's going to be a bit of a, that definitely is going to be a challenge, but I'm sure we'll come up with ways to overcome that. Now, HPC will be different to the internal marks that are part of the board exam evaluation. Right now we have internal marks, but this is going to be quite different from that. And 4 types of HPC have been developed in total as per the publication. We have the foundational stage, which is going to be classes 1 and 2. There is a preparatory stage for classes 3 to 5, middle stage for classes 6 to 8, and there's going to be one for senior classes from 9 to 12. So, the HPC is not one uniform thing that's going to be the same from class 1 to class 12. It's going to be 4 different types of HPC are going to be used. And as a child progresses in their educational journey, the way they are evaluated and the way they can also evaluate themselves changes. Now, among the 12 sections included in HPC for class 9 to 12, one is devoted to time management, plans after school, like what are the child's plans for the future, different life skills. These are some of the things that have gone into the HPC for senior classes, that's 9 to 12. Now, students will evaluate themselves based on these parameters as well. Like I said, one of the most important parts of HPC is going to be self-evaluation. A part of the plans After school section requires students to talk about whether they want to pursue higher education or undertake preparation for admission into professional colleges. What do they wish to do? Or do they want to take up a vocation? Now, HPC also comes in with accomplishments inventory, which tracks the steps and skills of a particular students, which includes whether they have information about a college, entrance exams, job opportunities. So, even having that information is actually critical to a child's success in life. So, once a child is evaluated about that, not only does it become a way to understand the child's progress, it also becomes a way to actually ensure better success for the child. Now, life skills like managing stress for self and others, this is going to be evaluated under HPC. Understanding the value of money and budgeting. Now, one of the most important skills in life that is not really taught to children is financial management, or rather your personal financial management. That is not taught. People really don't know how the money that comes into their pockets, how to spend it, how to save it, how to invest it, how much of it should they be spending on what aspects of life. These skills will be taught in the future, and children will be evaluated on those skills. Now, academic skills like engaging in independent work, research, and thinking critically and creatively will be part of the accomplishments inventory section. Like I said, we are discussing the accomplishment inventory section of HPC, and these will be the skills these are actually critical skills. Now, that is going to be evaluated in the future. Now, teachers' feedback on group project work, etc. will also, feedback of the peers will also be part of HPC. So this is going to put more importance to this is going to put more emphasis on the teachers in terms of the guidance they give to students instead of merely teaching what is in the syllabus. Teachers have to understand that the required competencies are vital for learners at the secondary level. This is done through activities like projects, individual research, and innovative classroom interactions. The activities need to be designed in a manner that they are meaningful for the students. So, this is how things are going to change in terms of HPC, and that is how the HPC is going to work. Now, what NCERT's report card says is, as per the available information, the report card will not be used in the ongoing session of 2024 and 25. However, teachers and officials will be trained on the implementation, because whenever we come up with an idea, and this is the way it works with whether we introduce a new syllabus, or we introduce some new aspects, or we introduce new sections to a syllabus, it's not immediately put forward into the education system. We always take time to train teachers, and then we do that. So, the same thing is going to be done here. Now, states can take a call on whether to implement the HPC as released by the NCERT, or they want to make changes to it and adapt it to their own needs in terms of the requirements of the state. Now, report cards are expected to be factored in results for those appearing for the boards in class 10 and 12. So, that's the idea. And some states, including Jammu Kashmir, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh, have begun preparing to implement HPC for those from classes 8 for the year 2024 and 25. So, this is where it is right now. So, this is about HPCs, the holistic progress cards. So, now we have some idea about HPCs, and it's going to define education in the future, because once we start changing, it's also about changing the way the education system works, and from rote learning and merely giving out answers in one examination, children also will be under less pressure, because it's a holistic thing and it's not entirely dependent on merely memorizing things. SDG index for the year 2023-24. This is the NITI Aayog has come out with the SDG Sustainable Development Goals Index for India, and they release a report every year. This is the report for 23-24. Now, the government's think tank NITI Aayog released its fourth evaluation report of India's progress on 16 Sustainable Development Goals adopted in 2015 by the United Nations, and the NITI Aayog launched this project in 2018. So, what we have basically done is, if you remember, there are 17 sustainable developmental goals. The NITI Aayog has come out with a way to evaluate the states on sustainable development on 16 of these goals. So, we will discuss that. Now, the latest report is out. So let us see how this, how the report itself is structured, how the states have performed, and how as a nation we are moving in terms of achieving the sustainable developmental goals. This was launched in 2018, like I said, and it's a comprehensive overview of the performance of states and union territories on various indicators in the sustainable developmental goals. It's a comprehensive framework. The index evaluates states and union territories on 16 out of the 17 SDGs, like I said, and it uses 113 indicators derived from the official national data sources. So, and the states and union territories are categorized into 4 categories. There is the first top category called the achiever. If you have reached all the sustainable developmental goals that we have, and you reach 100% of that, then it's called the achiever. Then there's a front runner, 65 to 99, if that is the score. There's a performance score between 50 to 64, and an aspirant score between 0 to 49. Now, what was the methodology used for coming up with the Sustainable Developmental Goal Index for India by the NITI Aayog? What they first did was, they identified indicators based on state-wise acceptability and availability of data. Now, as a nation, we have enormous data. That has never been a problem. Then we each rescaled each indicator. 0 meant the worst performer, 100 meant the best. Suppose a state has 100% literacy. That means that you have already achieved 100. So that's you can't do better than 100. That's kind of the limitation there. I mean, that's the maximum possible. Now, the weightage was adopted equal weights for each indicator in line with the internationally accepted practices. Remember, the SDGs originally come from the United Nations. We have used that for making the index for understanding how the states are performing, states and union territories. Now, individual goal score computed each state's aggregate score by calculating the arithmetic mean of normalized values of all indicators. So, when we say a state has done well on a particular indicator, what that particular goal, what that means is that the individual indicators, we normalize that. They may be doing well in one indicator, not doing well in another, but we still take the mean out of that. And then we reach the conclusion as to how they are performing in one particular goal. Now, the composite score is aggregated states overall SDG index score by averaging all goal scores. So, I should say what we do essentially is take the scores of all the 16 indices, and then we see how a state has performed. Now, this is a multidimensional approach. The index covers a wide range of social, economic and environmental parameters, ensuring a holistic assessment for development. Now, remember, SDG itself looks at environmental impact, looks at social impact, looks at economic impact. There we also try to see, for example, zero hunger is one of the SDG goals. So, that would be your economic impact. Now, promoting competition collaboration by ranking states and union territories. The index fosters a healthy competition between the states. So, each state is trying to achieve the goals before the other does, or trying to reach the SDG goals. This is what we are now calling competitive federalism, competitive and cooperative federalism. Data-driven decision making. The SDG index is a crucial resource for understanding how a state is performing in a particular area. Now, coming to the latest report, it measures and tracks all the states, like I said. Now, there is now the composite score for the country was 57 in 2018. It was 66 in 2020 and 2021. Right now, it is 71. So, from 2018 to 2023-24, we have gone from 57 to 71 in terms of the composite scores. Now, there have been good improvements in terms of no poverty. That is the first goal in terms of the sustainable developmental goals. The first goal, no poverty, we have done well as a nation. Decent work, we have done well as a nation. And economic climate action, we have also done well as a nation. Now, the SDG index reports a positive performance of the states and union territories in their SDG index. Like I said, the scores for the states now range from 57 to 79, while union territories score between 65 and 77. This represents an overall improvement from the previous year, where it was 52 to 75 for the states and 62 to 79 for the union territories. Now, I want you to pay attention to this one. These are the 17 sustainable developmental goals that have been proposed and that are being implemented across the entire world by the United Nations. So, these are the same ones. So, first is no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation infrastructure, reduce inequalities, sustainable cities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institution. Now, I want you to pay attention to the 17th one. That is partnership for goals. The 17th Sustainable Developmental Goal was strengthen the means of implementation, revitalize the global partnership of development, sustainable development goals. That, needless to say, cannot form part of the SDG index for the states. So, that is the reason we have only 16 sustainable developmental goals for the states and not 17, because the 17th one is about international collaborations and that does not apply to the states. Now, this is how it has been set up actually. The 17 goals, like I said, this is how they have been set up. You have biosphere, life on water, life on land, then climate action, then we have the society, like poverty, no poverty, quality of education, then we have economy. And the 17th one comes at the top about how to put all this together through partnership between various people. Now, how are the states done in terms of the sustainable developmental goals? This is how they are ranked right now in the SDG index of 2023-24. Now, goal number 1, no poverty. Tamil Nadu has done the best in the entire country among the states, and among union territories, Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu have done well. Zero hunger, the goal number 2. Kerala has done the best among the states, Puducherry among union territories. Goal number 3, good health and well-being, Gujarat and Delhi respectively. Goal number 4, quality education, Kerala again has done exceptionally well in quality education. And you should remember that Kerala has had near 100% literacy for a very long period of time. So, it is only expected that they do well here. Now, goal number 5, gender equality, Nagaland and Lakshadweep have done quite well. In goal number 6, clean water and sanitation, Goa has done the best among all the states, Andaman and Nicobar Islands among the union territories. Goal number 7, actually a large number of states have done well in terms of affordable and clean energy, along with a large number of union territories. Goal number 8, decent work and economic growth, Himachal Pradesh has done well, along with Ladakh among union territories. Now, coming to goal number 13, Sikkim and Tamil Nadu have done well on climate action. Chandigarh has done well among, these are the best performers among all the states, has done well among union territories. Goal number 12, responsible consumption and production, Tripura has done the best among all the states, Jammu and Kashmir among union territories. Now, Jammu and Kashmir is a union territory, we have to remember that it is no longer a state. Goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities, Maharashtra has done well, has done the best among the states, along with Chandigarh among union territories. Goal number 10, reduce inequality, Goa has done the best among states, along with Puducherry among union territories. Goal number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, Goa and Puducherry. As you can see, Goa has done well along quite a few sustainable developmental goals. Goal number 16 is peace, justice and strong institutions. Gujarat and Ladakh have done well. Now, this is an important goal. How we study peace, justice and strong institutions is about access to the justice system is one thing. For example, we look at the crime rates in a state, those crime rates, whether they are coming down or not. Then we look at the violence against women, both psychological violence and actual violence. So, you take those statistics and then you come up with the idea of peace, justice and strong institutions. Goal number 15, life on land. Jharkhand and Tripura have done well. They are the leading states. Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu have done well among union territories. And goal number 14, life below water, West Bengal has done the best. Now, this is how states are ranked in terms of all the goals, how they have achieved in terms of their actual marks, actual scores that they have achieved in the past year. As you can see, affordable and clean energy is one sustainable developmental goal that across the country, all the states are doing quite well. Because 100 would be a perfect score, we are at 96 here. Now, gender equality is a huge area of concern for us. We have a very deeply rooted patriarchal system, and that is the reason we are barely there in terms of 49. Now, other places where we have done is sustainable cities and communities, we are seeing at 83. This is also, we should now link this idea to the smart cities program, which has slowly transformed the cities over a period of time. Now, this is what I started off by saying, that how it was in 2018 and over a period of time, how we have improved. So, 2018, the composite score was 57 and right now it is 71. So, in terms of sustainable developmental goals, from 57 we reached 60, then 66 and 71 over a period of time. We want this to reach 100 actually. Now, state-wise range, like I said, we have already discussed this, 57 to 79, 65 to 77. And in the new states and there are several gainers since the baseline has been set. Baseline was set in 2018. So, top gainers have been Uttar Pradesh, Jammu Kashmir, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, Haryana, Assam, Punjab, Tripura, Madhya Pradesh and Odisha. These have been the top gainers because we normalize the scores, remember. Now, this is how it is right now for this year. This is where the country stands. These are the front runner states and the performer states. These are still, performers are behind front runners. So, they are in this range of 50 to 64. Meghalaya, Nagaland, Jharkhand and Bihar, they are yet to catch up on the sustainable developmental goals. Now, in terms of how the states have improved in terms of the sustainable developmental goals scores, Uttarakhand has done the best. They have improved by 7 points. Kerala has done well, they have improved by 4 points. But overall, the country has gained by 5 points. Now, top performers for this year's Sustainable Developmental Goal Index have been Uttarakhand at 79, Kerala at 79, Tamil Nadu at 78. The states that are lagging behind would be Nagaland at 63, Jharkhand at 62 and Bihar at 57. So, this was about the Sustainable Developmental Goals Index that is brought out by NITI Aayog every year, and it's important that you know about this. Pay a little more attention to this and see what is going into each Sustainable Developmental Goal, what are the several indicators that go into that, because that would require a little more time. I have not covered it in this, and because generally that's the kind of thing that might end up in your prelims as a question, that this particular thing, does it form part of a sustainable developmental goals or not, something like that. Guidelines to prevent stereotyping and discrimination of PwDs. The Supreme Court, in a landmark judgment, has come out with a judgment that says that actually has laid down comprehensive guidelines about how we want to prevent stereotyping and discrimination of persons with disabilities, the PwDs, about how they are portrayed in media, how they are portrayed in films, how they are portrayed in various docu-series and all. The stereotyping that is being done, now the Supreme Court has come out with a set of guidelines saying that it cannot be done in a way that puts them at a disadvantage or makes their lives worse than it is right now. Now, there was a plea to ban a film called Aankh Micholi for derogatory portrayal of PwDs. And however, the Supreme Court refused to interfere in terms of banning the movie, but they said that we should have a set of guidelines about how PwDs, people with disabilities, are portrayed across the country in various forms of media. Now, the Supreme Court ruling is against the insensitive representation of people with disabilities. The Supreme Court has emphasized the need for authentic and respectful representation of people with disabilities in films and media. We have seen this problem for very long, wherein somebody maybe with a speech impediment or somebody with a hearing disorder is the butt of jokes in a movie or in a TV serial and all, and it looks funny probably at a point of time, but the problem is it reinforces the idea that it's okay to discriminate against these people, whereas they're all struggling to actually live a life that is a life of dignity and a life of respect. So it was necessary that this issue was addressed. Now the bench highlighted the importance of inclusivity and realism in films, underlining the societal impact of such representations. The Supreme Court has said that creative freedom is good, it needs to be respected, but representing people in a disparaging way is not cannot be covered under creative freedom. For example, if we have films that are portraying excessive violence against, say, a particular group of people, or excessive violence against women, or let us say excessive violence against children, you can't say that is creative freedom. Let us say somebody wants to portray sexual violence against children or wants to glorify a serial killer. We cannot say that is creative freedom. There are certain societal standards, there are certain moral standards, and portrayal must actually consider the impact and the consequences of that portrayal, which is what the Supreme Court is saying. Now, the court recognized the influential role of cinema in shaping public perceptions and stressed that inaccurate or stereotypical portrayals can actually harm people a lot. Now, movies have enormous impact in India. It's a well-established fact. The way we dress, the way we speak, the way we interact with people. For example, before this movie, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge King, Karwa Chauth was largely, restricted to certain parts of Punjab and where the Punjabi culture was there. Now, the impact of this movie has been so much that over the past 2 decades, Karwa Chauth has become a national phenomenon. Everybody, practices it without taking a moralistic position. Fact is, it has an impact. Films have an impact on life. Films have an impact on how people lead their lives. For example, fat shaming used to be a pretty common thing in films. Now it has reduced or almost has stopped. Similarly, making fun of people with disabilities can stop in movies. Now, this would, according to the Supreme Court, these portrayals are a violation of Article 14 because stereotyping is antithesis to dignity and anti-discriminatory, and therefore there must be a clear distinction between disability humor, which helps in understanding the disabled, and disablement humor, which denigrates the people with a disability. Now, the ruling is a crucial step changing the narrative around disability in India, because till now we never really had any idea, any guidelines about how these portrayals need to be done. Now, the ruling also aligns broadly with the goals of the rights of persons with disabilities, the act that was promulgated in 2016 that seeks to protect and promote the rights and dignity of PwDs. We have actually had a fairly detailed discussion about this. We also had a fairly detailed discussion about PwDs in one of our previous lectures, and in a way we are taking this, we are building on to what you have learned in the past. The essay emphasized that human rights model of disability, making the government and private parties obligated to facilitate full and effective participation of PwDs in society. Right now, it's not really. We'll see. We'll discuss the data. We'll have a database discussion in a minute. people really are not able to participate fully in the society if they have disabilities. Like close to I think 60% of people with disabilities do not have jobs. Now, there are several models under which disabilities are understood. One is primarily there are two types. One is the medical model, the other is the social model. And there is also a human rights model which is an evolution of the social model and says that people with disability are part of the society and have the same rights as everyone. Now, the medical model of disability, this used to be the standard way of understanding disability for several decades. It says that the person has a disability, they need to be fixed so that they can fit into a society. It's like you don't have an arm, you can, have a prosthetic arm or something like that so that you can function similarly in a comparable way to a normal person. While that is good, there is also another way of looking at that. Now, for example, somebody has a hearing impairment, you can't go to the films because you cannot hear. Now, you can't go to a cafe by themselves. If say somebody is blind, they can't go around the cities because you really don't know how to do that. Can't work somewhere because they can't go, can't climb the stairs if somebody has it. So, this is the medical model of disability. And then what we do is try and ensure that this particular individual can overcome these disabilities. Now, the social model says that we can make changes to the society, minor changes, so that people with disabilities, with or without those, say hearing aids or with walking sticks or walking guide dogs, still would be able to have a normal life. For example, if you go to a movie, you could always have subtitles. A person with hearing impairment can actually read the subtitles and enjoy the movie. You don't really have to ensure that they have cochlear implants or they have hearing aids or nothing like that is necessary. Now, for example, if you go to a restaurant, you can have a menu card with a braille if people can't read it. Those who are those who have reading problem, those who are blind can actually use braille or can have electronic options. Now, similarly, now we are seeing that a large number of buildings have ramps that have been constructed so that people with disabilities, those who have chairs or those who have walking sticks or something, they can climb those stairs. So, this is the social model where we try to change the society in such a way that it doesn't really impact those who are able, but those who are disabled can lead a normal life. Now, there are several other models of understanding disability. One, we have the medical model that we just discussed. There is a social model. There is also an economic model. There is a functional solutions model. There is a social identity and charity model. These are all, without going into too much of details about this, these are the major models, but the courts have emphasized on social model. That's the reason we discussed that. Now, as I was saying, these are 2011 statistics. The way people with disabilities have integrated into the society is really, we are really lagging a lot. There are 2.68 crore people with disabilities in the country. That's about 2.21% of the population. It's actually the population of many small countries. Of them, we have 1.5 crore men and 1.18 crore females. And about 69% of the people with disabilities live in rural areas. Only 31% live in cities. Now, 55% of the people with disabilities are literate, of whom 45%, or among women it is 45% literacy, among men it is 62%. Now, among the if you look at employment status of disabled population, there are only 36% of people with disabilities who are actually gainfully employed, which is to say 64% of this 2.68 crore people are unemployed. Now, among women, 77% of the people are unemployed, people with disabilities. And among men, 53% of the men with disabilities are unemployed. So, these are the things that have to change. Now, what are the major types of disability in the country? This is all still 2011 census data, and we haven't had a census after that, so we continue to use this. And we have had the earlier discussion where we discussed about PwDs and other things. We have actually discussed in detail about how this has, the absence of updated data has an impact as well. Now, if you will see, people with seeing disabilities, they are about 19%, hearing disabilities about again 90%, 19%, and those who have problem in movement, let us say those who have either, those who can't walk or those who have problem with their legs, that's about 20%. So, these are the major disabilities, and about 8% of the population who are, of those who are disabled are actually suffering from mental illnesses. Now, this is an important idea. Whenever we talk of disability, we should be aware of this idea. It's called ableism, which is to say it refers to the negative attitudes and stigma and stereotypes that discriminate against persons with disabilities on the basis of their impairments, which is what the Supreme Court was saying, that the portrayals are actually based on ableism, and they are at worst cruel, and even if people find it funny, it's not really helping anybody. At the heart of the idea, ableism is rooted in the assumption that disabled people require fixing and defines people by their disability. Now, remember this idea. Over a lifetime, a majority of the people will end up with some kind of disability or the other. By the time you are 45, 50 years of age, your sight starts to get damaged. You'll start using spectacles. That's a kind of disability. As you get even older, you may end up with hearing problems. So, even if those who are able, those who are perfectly fine, over a period of time, they will end up with some kind of disability. We should not think that only those people who are born with disabilities, those who have disabilities at birth or have disabilities maybe due to accidents or something, those are the only people affected by this. That's not true. Most of the population is going to be affected by this. Now, coming back to the Supreme Court's guidelines, these are the major ideas that have come from the Supreme Court. Avoiding derogatory language, words that cultivate institutional discrimination, such as cripples, spastic, and words that individual should be avoided. For example, afflicted, suffering, victim, these are the words to be avoided, because these words contribute to a negative self-image in terms of the person who's suffering the disability and perpetuate discriminatory attitudes. It's like, for example, we are normalizing the idea that say somebody has a mental disability, it's okay because that person has a mental disability, whereas we should be more compassionate towards that person and try and create a world where the person can function normally. Similarly, the courts have said that there should be accurate representation. It's nothing about us. What the idea is, nothing about us without us, as in the involvement of the PwD community in terms of their accurate representation. And we have seen this over and over and over in portrayals, especially in movies, where there are negative portrayals because the people involved in that particular project don't know enough about the disability. For example, somebody may be talking of, say, a particular mental illness without understanding what that is, and then they portray it in the movie, and that leads to further stereotypes in the society. So, that is what it is, that they should representation should be accurate. Now, creative freedom versus marginalizing portrayals, it cannot include the freedom to lampoon, stereotype, misrepresent, disparage marginalized communities. For example, this happens with a variety of communities. There have been Sardarji jokes. It really ends up in a situation where it looks it's okay to laugh at a particular community because that is what you have been told. Now, that is what the courts are saying needs to be avoided. Now, collaboration with disability and advocacy groups, this is another idea that has come out from the Supreme Court. Now, essentially, there are 7 points that have been put forward to prevent stereotyping and discrimination of PwDs. Now, like I first said, avoid negative words because that creates a negative self-image. Avoid language which overlooks the social barriers. Check adequate medical information. Information should not be based on myths. For example, stereotypes show that people with, say, hearing, those who have, for example, you must have all heard of Daredevil. where he's blind, but rest of him is actually a Superman. So things like that, those are myths, that if you can't see properly, your hearing has, gone up to an, supernatural level of hearing. It's not so. So these are the kind of myths that need to be avoided. Now, creators must practice nothing about us without us, that is, involve the communities. Now, involve the advocacy groups. There must be training and sensitization program for the creators, which is not really difficult. If somebody is going to end up in a project, or rather is going to do a project on a particular disability, it's only natural that they have adequate information about that. Now, what are the shortcomings of the ruling? The human rights model is an abstract idea and difficult to implement. The guidelines are limited to only visual media, and the judgment may go against the spirit of creative freedom. But the idea of creative freedom, there is no such thing as absolute creative freedom. So these are the main shortcomings of the judgment. So this was about the court's recent rulings about stereotyping and discrimination, discriminatory portrayals of people with disabilities. Now, ICAR to launch One Scientist, One Product scheme. Let's discuss this. Now, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research launched a scheme. It's called the One Scientist, One Product program on July 16th to improve research in the field of agriculture and animal husbandry. Now, let us first find out about ICAR. Then we'll see what kind of work ICAR has done in the past and whether this goal is actually achievable, what are the kind of institutional framework they have, what kind of research institutions they have, how they actually work. Now, ICAR was established on 16 July 1929. It's an autonomous organization of the Department of Agricultural Research and Education under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare of the government. Now, it coordinates and manages agricultural research and education across India with a network of 113. There are a network of 113 institutions and 74 agricultural universities in the country. Now, the contributions to Indian agriculture, ICAR has played a pivotal role in the Green Revolution and subsequent agricultural advancements, significantly increased the production of food grains. If you remember, we used to be a country that had to import a lot of food grains, and food riots were very common because there wouldn't be enough food grains. From that, we have become a country which is surplus. A lot of the credit must go to ICAR. Now, the institutions recognized for promoting excellence in higher agricultural education and cutting-edge research. Now, looking at ICAR, now what is ICAR? ICAR, like I said, it stands for Indian Council of Agricultural Research. It's an autonomous body, and it is also the apex body for coordinating, guiding and managing research and education in agriculture, including horticulture, fisheries and animal sciences in the entire country. So, it's not just agriculture, but also horticulture, fisheries and animal sciences, because these are all closely related to each other. I mean, they affect the same set of people eventually. Established on 16 July 1929, the headquarters are at Delhi, and there are 101 institutes and 71 agricultural universities. Now, it's 113 and 74. Now, what is the mandate of ICAR? It's to plan, undertake, coordinate and promote research and technology development for sustainable agriculture, aid, impart and coordinate agricultural education to enable quality human resource development, frontline extension for technology application, adoption, knowledge management and capacity development for agri-based rural development. They create policies, cooperation and consultancy in agricultural research, education, extension. So that is their mandate. Now, these are the institutions that are there. There are 4 deemed universities, 6 national bureaus, 17 research centers, 23 directorates, 50 institutes and 706 Krishi Vigyan Kendras, of which 83 are in Uttar Pradesh. Now, about the One Scientist, One Product program, as per the ICAR Director General, each of ICAR's 5,521 scientists will be tasked with developing a product, technology, model, concept or notable publication. And the scientists will identify the product at the start of each year with the progress being monitored on a quarterly basis, and it will be monitored on a quarterly basis at the level of the institute and biannually at the headquarters. And this program will run for 5 years, and the focus is initially going to be on high yielding oil seeds and pulses. Now remember, as a country, despite a magnificent agricultural production in practically every field, we still import oil seeds and pulses many times, and that is something we want to prevent, because that essentially opens us to both the trends of worldwide inflation, and also, we are dependent on the rest of the world, hits our economy, hits the it also hits household budgets. So there are several aspects of this that need to be addressed. So this is a good idea. The One Scientist, One Product program is part of ICAR's broader Lab to Land research initiative. It emphasizes individual accountability among scientists, and the idea is to develop tangible products that can be directly implemented in the field. Now, what ICAR wants to do is develop 100 new seed varieties and 100 farm technologies within 100 days. That is the center's plan. In a recent update, ICAR has noted that breeder seeds have helped cultivate about 16 million hectares with biofortified crops like wheat, rice, pearl millet, lentil and mustard in 2023 and 24. And since 2014 and 15, ICAR has released 2,593 high-yielding varieties, including 2,177 climate-resilient and 150 biofortified varieties that has and this effort has boosted the production during even challenging years. So there is actually a lot of good work happening from ICAR's end, and India is an agricultural powerhouse. Like I said, we do produce quite a lot of our own agricultural grain, and we also actually export quite a lot, but we still import 50% of the pulses and nearly 2/3 of our oil seeds. Like I said, this has been a problem, a recurring problem over a period of time. Suddenly you see the price of oil going up, suddenly you see this price of pulses going up. So that is what we want to address. Now, during the last 5 years, what ICAR has done is 218 technologies and machines have been developed. 75 technologies have been licensed or commercialized. 41,540 prototypes were manufactured and 1,100 entrepreneurs were trained, which is actually impressive statistics. And there is something called a Makana popping machine, and this has actually had a massive impact on the way Makana, which is actually also called fox nuts, this has actually had a very strong impact on Makana production and also on the way it has been marketed, and people actually have gained a lot and their incomes have gone up substantially. Now, marketing of Makana and its value added products has grown up by 40% in the just past 3 years, all because of one popping machine that has been developed by SIAR. Now, they also developed technology for accelerated retting of jute. This saves about 50% of water. Jute again is jute like paper consumes a lot of water during the production phase. So, if you can save 50%, that's massive. And the fiber quality is also improved. And an additional income of 4,500 rupees per ton is possible. What are the major achievements of ICAR? ICAR developed a vaccine against bird flu. Vaccine was developed at High Security Animal Disease Laboratory. ICAR has helped the country increase the production of food grains by 5.4 times, horticulture crops by 10.1 times, fish by 15.2 times, milk by 9.7 times, and eggs by 48.1 times since 1951 to 2017. So, ICAR has had a massive impact in the country. So, when we say not enough research is being done in the country, this is probably one area where we have actually done good work. Like I said, they have developed and released nearly 3,300 high yielding varieties of hybrid crops for different categories. Total of 1,596 high yielding varieties and horticultural crops were developed. And they were the first in the world to sequence the pigeon pea genome as a purely indigenous effort by 31 scientists. So this is about ICAR, and when we see the idea, one scientist, one product, it is not really a pipe dream when you consider the context in which that idea has been developed and the idea is going to be implemented. ICAR has actually done enormous work in the past several decades, and it is an achievable goal. Govt's UWIN portal to redraw immunization program, immunization map. Let us discuss this idea in greater detail. Now, the UWIN is a digital platform that has been launched on August 15th, and it aims to transform vaccination of maternal and child healthcare across the country. But basically, it's going to digitalize the vaccination program across the country. This is going to be based on the same concept that was used during the COVID time when we had COVID, and this is going to have a massive impact. So, what is this idea? Let us discuss this in greater detail. It will replace the current manual system that is being used by healthcare workers, and it will streamline record keeping and marking, making a significant shift in primary healthcare delivery. Right now, the way vaccinations work is, we have cards that are maintained by ASHA workers, and it's all done manually, and data is entered manually, data is monitored manually. People can only go to one particular place where they're registered. There are a lot of, we can have a much better system, and this is a very simple way of doing it, and actually it's going to have a massive impact. Now, universal immunization program of the country is one of the largest public health programs targeting close to 2.67 crore newborns and 2.9 crore pregnant women annually. Now, it is one of the most cost-effective public health interventions in the world and is largely responsible for reducing vaccines preventable under 5 mortality in the country. A child is said to be fully vaccinated if a child receives all due vaccines as per the national immunization schedule within the first year of a child's life. Now, what are the vaccines covered? Under UIP, immunization is provided free of cost, unlike a lot of parts of the world where it is charged, which is where actually when we had COVID vaccines, people were quite surprised that they had to pay for it. And provides free of cost vaccines against 12 vaccine preventable diseases. Nationally against 9 diseases: diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, polio, measles, rubella, severe form of childhood tuberculosis, hepatitis B, meningitis, and pneumonia. These are caused by Haemophilus influenza type B. Subnationally against 3 diseases: rotavirus diarrhea, pneumococcal pneumonia, and Japanese encephalitis. Now, there are 2 major milestones of universal immunization program, which is elimination of polio, which has been lauded across the world, which was achieved in 2014, and maternal and neonatal tetanus elimination in 2015. This is less well known but equally impressive. Now, what is UWIN? UWIN, like I said, is a portal which is a replication of the COVID-19 vaccine management system, and it aims to maintain an electronic data registry of routine immunization. Currently, UWIN is in a pilot mode, and all the states and union territories are involved in this except West Bengal. It captures every vaccination event of a pregnant woman and children under the age of 5 under the UIP. Now, India's UIP is a part of the reproductive and child healthcare program. It's under the National Health Mission. It is one of the largest in the world, like I said, and we cover 12 vaccine preventable diseases. And the UWIN platform will capture each and every vaccination event of all women and children under the UIP. Now, the platform, what it's going to do is, it's going to generate a uniform QR-based digitally verifiable e-vaccination certificate similar to the COVID vaccine. I mean, all of you must have received a COVID certificate. It's going to be similar to that. And this can be accessed anytime by the people who are actually getting themselves vaccinated. So basically, on your phone, a person who's getting the child vaccinated, any of the family members, mother, father, or if the parents or grandparents are involved in it, they'd all have access to this data. And it will update vaccination status, it will tell you delivery outcomes, and it will be in real time, and it will be available to both those who are providing the vaccination to the child, which are the healthcare providers, and the intermediaries, and to the parents of the child, and also the vaccinations that are going to be done. Now, the citizens will be allowed to self-register for vaccinations just using a phone, and an automated SMS will inform the people about registration confirmations, administered doses and upcoming doses. So basically, now what's going to happen, the way it happens right now is, the ASHA workers have to continuously remind people that this is the date at which a vaccination has to be done, this is where you have to come. So many times they have to physically go and get people, or they have to continuously tell. But now with UWin, it will be possible to just send alerts on the phone, and everybody these days uses phones. So you will have real-time alerts, and there will be also a confirmation of a vaccination that has been done. It also facilitates the creation of a Ayushman Bharat health account, ABA, for comprehensive health maintenance of the people who are going to be part of this. Now, what are the benefits of this? There's going to be a real-time registration of the children and digital vaccination record of the children. This will reduce zero-dose children, which is a category of people. This is a term that is used to describe children who don't receive vaccinations. So now when we know actually very clearly who's missed out in real time, it would be easier to reduce the children who are missing out on vaccinations. Now, this will also be extremely useful for migrant workers, because you no longer are tied down to one particular center where you had the first vaccination. You have your vaccination data with you on your phone, and it's available to everybody who's part of the healthcare system. You can access any vaccination center in the country, any primary healthcare center, any hospital, and the child can be vaccinated. Even if the parents are migrant workers, they're going from place to place, the child does not miss out on vaccinations. Now, this will also allow us to maintain detailed records of children and pregnant women who are due for vaccinations, and there will also be a detailed record available of the healthcare workers who can help the people who need the vaccinations to be done. Now, there will be an online self-registration. Like I said, that was one of the first things. Now, there will be a generation of ABA, Ayushman Bharat health account. It will be possible to search for vaccination centers. Like right now, the idea is that people get a vaccination done in one center and they're tied on there. And right now, with this, now people will be able to search for vaccination centers in the UWin app. And you can also schedule appointments using an UWin app, so it's no longer going to be the case where people go to a vaccination center, maybe somebody is not there, that will be avoided. Now, the entire vaccination data is going to be digitalized, which is actually going to have an enormous impact. Now, there will be also a digital acknowledgement. Like I said, people will get certificates with a QR code, very clearly showing how the vaccination has been done. Now, there will be notifications and reminders. Continuously, people will be told that this is your date is upcoming, this is the date you should be done. You cannot miss it beyond this date, because there is always a particular window during which a vaccination must be done. Now, they will also be able to ensure dose intervals are correctly maintained. Now, there will also be a provision to get vaccinations done across the entire country. Now, what is the problem with the current system? Present vaccination records are maintained manually, and this has led to a lot of duplication of records, and also a lot of beneficiaries have been left out, which is a huge problem. Now, there is inadequate monitoring of targeted mothers and children unless the ASHA workers are extremely dedicated. a lot of pregnant mothers are actually not monitored on a regular basis. So UWIN will allow us to monitor them and take care of their needs. Like for example, folic acid has to be given to pregnant mothers. This has to be done, and the only way right now it is done is we send an ASHA worker to the girl's house and find out whether tablets have been taken or not. Now, if you have a UWIN app, it would be much more easier to actually ensure that they are taking those things, or rather, you make sure that they come to the health center, collect the tablets, and then you know that they are taking or not taking. Just to use one example. It also, one of the present problems is it's plagued by the absence of individual tracking of mother and child. Like I said, only the current vaccination program is largely dependent on ASHA workers. So if there is somebody who's not able to do their job properly, an entire area actually falls out of the system. Now, another major issue is that immunization at private health centers is not recorded properly, and those records don't come into the main system. So UWIN app is going to take care of that as well. There's also a lack of awareness among the beneficiaries that is going to be tackled. Now, what is the status of immunization in the country? When we're talking of immunization, let us also see how successfully we are doing this. Recently released data by WHO and UNICEF say that there's a slight drop in childhood immunization in 2023 compared to 22. There was a 2 percentage point drop from 95% in 22 to 93% in 23. So this is a cause of concern. The global average itself is 89%, but there is an importance attributed to the fact of number 95. When we have 95, it effectively means that everybody is covered, because those 5% also, there is always a herd effect. For that, you need about 95%. That's the reason we try to make sure that it doesn't fall below that number. Now, coverage of DTP vaccine is generally used as a proxy for number of zero-dose children. Now, it shows that there were 1.6 million zero-dose children that is those who didn't get a dose. In 2023, it has gone up from 1.1 million in 2022, which is to say almost 0.5 million people have been added to zero, have missed out on vaccinations. A third dose of DTP vaccine has fallen to 91%. And in terms of absolute numbers, 2.04 million children remained under-vaccinated in 2023, which is slightly lower than 2.11 million children in 2019. Now, this is how the schedule is generally, and this is how it starts off at birth. We have 0 BCG. Then at 6 weeks, there are a set of vaccinations that are given. Then at 10 weeks, there is a vaccination again given. At 14 weeks, the child is again vaccinated. 9 to 12 months, then there is 16 to 24 months. Then 5 to 6 years, 10 years and 16 years. And pregnant women have a different set of vaccinations. So this is the vaccination schedule in the country. And UWIN is going to digitalize all this, and we can actually make sure that zero child vaccination is prevented and all children are covered under vaccinations. Global Gender Gap Report 2024. Now, the Global Gender Gap Report is released by the World Economic Forum. It was released recently, and let us see where we stand in terms of the Global Gender Report. This is actually something that should bother us a lot, because as a country, we don't do particularly well in terms of the position of women in our society, whether we compare it to the position of women in our own country or we compare it to other countries. And if we compare the position of women in India to the position of women around the world, we are actually doing horribly. That's the only way to say it. Now, the World Economic Forum report of 2024 says that India is on the 129th position of 146 economies that were studied, that have been calculated, which is to say there are just 17 countries in the world that are worse than us. in terms of the way women are treated, or in terms of the position of women in those countries. Now, the global gender gap score in 2024 is 68.5%, meaning 31.5% of the gap remains unaddressed. The progress in this case has been extremely slow. Even if we talk of sustainable developmental goals, this is one goal that is like really more than a century away in terms of being met. Sorry. Now, it's the Global Gender Gap Report is an annual publication, and it evaluates the progress towards gender equality worldwide. Now, this was established in 2006, and there are 4 key areas which are studied, which are used to actually evaluate the position of women in a particular country. The 4 areas are economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. I mean, more or less, these are the 4 axes around which power flows around the country, and also these are the 4 axes that have to be dealt with if we want to improve the position of women in the country, or even any marginalized community. This is actually a good and valid way of trying to understand inequality. Now, let us look at a little more detail of what goes into each of these 4 categories. Now, when we talk of economic participation and opportunity, labor force participation, now each of these indicators has a maximum of 1, which means if the score is 1, that is a maximum that can be, everything is equal, there is perfect equality, and 0 means there is perfect inequality. This is generally the idea that is used in whenever we try to study inequality of any form. Now, wage inequality, equality for similar work, estimated earned income, legislators, senior officials, managers, professional and technical workers. So, each of these are assigned different weights, and they have different values, and total up they come to 1. Okay. So, these are the set of indicators that are used for studying this particular aspect. Then educational attainment, similarly studied in terms of ratio of literacy rate, how many women, what is the percentage of literacy for men and women, enrollment in primary education, enrollment in secondary education, and enrollment in tertiary education. Similarly, again, we sum it up, the limit is the max 1, and each of these carries a different weight. Now, if you notice, primary education has the maximum weightage, and tertiary education has the least weightage. Now, when we talk of health and survival, we see the ratio. There is sex ratio at birth, and there is human life expectancy. Now, if you notice here, you will see that sex ratio at birth is less than 1, the limit, because naturally more girls are born in a population than more boys. So, that is the reason the limit that can be there is 0.944. So, if there is 1 boy born for 1 girl, that is actually unequal. Now, similarly, healthy life expectancy is, you will see, higher than 1 for the same reason, because women tend to have longer lifespans than men. So, that is the reason these 2 have been adjusted there. Now, political empowerment, it is taken in terms of women in parliament, women in ministerial positions, and years with female heads. That is a head of a state, sorry. Now, again, you will see that when you have a head of a state, that has a maximum weightage. Now, the next highest weightage is given to the number of active legislators in any parliament. And then the third, in terms of weightage, now how many women are ministers, that is the third one that's given. So, this is the way these 4 categories are calculated, and based on that, we take the numbers for each particular country, and then we calculate and see how each country is doing. Okay. Now, let us see some more details of this. Now, India, within our region, India is ranked 5th. Only Bangladesh and Maldives are lower than us. only Pakistan and Maldives are lower than us, and every other country, even in our own region, is ranked higher. Now, what are the key findings and statistics with respect to educational achievement? Enrollment and literacy rates, despite high enrollment in primary and secondary, tertiary education, the literacy gap of between men and women is 17.2 percentage points, which is a lot. So that is the reason we are losing out in this category. The latest figure shows that girls constitute only 48% of the school population, and this there is a decline in terms of the secondary education, but there is a higher rate of retention among children. In terms of higher education, gross enrollment ratio for women it is 28.5%, which is slightly above that of males, which is 28.3%. Female enrollment has increased by 32% since 2014 and 15. What are the factors that are affecting this, that are affecting actually educational attainment, because that is an important aspect of studying gender gap. What has happened is we have built more schools, and that has actually helped improve the level of educational attainment among girl children. There are more children who come into schools. The idea is that if the schools are close enough to, say, a village or within a village, or they're at a distance that are accessible to a girl child, the chances of the girl child going to the school are higher. And as the distance increases, more boys are likely to go to that school than girls. So as we have increased the number of schools, girl enrollment has gone up. However, there are regional disparities, with some states are not doing particularly well in terms of secondary education. Now, in terms of female teachers, we have increased the number of female teachers. That has again had an impact on increasing educational levels among girl children. Schools with only males only teachers typically tend to have fewer girl students than those who have girl teachers who are women as well. So this is again another thing that has been addressed, that is we are continuously trying to, it can't change overnight, because recruitments are a continuous process. To make sure that there are enough women teachers in all the schools is going to actually take us decades. It can't be done overnight, because see, it's also a question of people are not on contracts, and you can't fire people on contracts. That again leads to another set of problems. Now, there is another issue is transportation and sanitation. This has been improved. Again, this has improved the enrollment rates of children, girl children. Now, which are the states that have done the best in terms of gender gap? You'll see that Iceland is at the top of the world. They have, in terms of their gender equality, they're at 0.935%, which is almost close to, which is almost 1. It's like they're almost there in terms of their gender gap. The gender gap between men and women is the lowest in Iceland, followed by Finland, Norway, and New Zealand. And Sweden is in the top. Now, what is interesting is Iceland, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, the Nordic countries, consistently do well on all human development indices. That's actually the most developed part of the world, both in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of healthcare, in terms of social security, practically all aspects of life. That part of the world does the best. Now, even in the top 15, you have Denmark, which is again very close to that. They have a lot of cultural similarities with the Nordic countries. They again do exceptionally well on these indices. Now, where is India? India is at 129 at 0.641. Shockingly, even Saudi Arabia is ahead of India in gender equality. Consider this for a minute, that a country that has been, considered, it's just continuously criticized for inequality of women, is actually ahead of India in terms of gender gap. They are more equal than Indian women are. If you will see Nepal, Japan, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, all these countries are better than India in terms of the position of women in their society. Now, in our region, only Maldives and Pakistan is at 145th, so they are actually in a terrible position. Now, what is the, if we look at the indices, by each index, how is the world doing? You'll see that the global gender gap is 68.5%. We want it to get to 100% where there is no gender inequality anymore. Economic participation in opportunity sub-index, that is one of the areas where the world is not doing well. We are doing, as a world, we are doing well in terms of educational attainment. We are at 94.9%. In terms of health and survival sub-index, which is where we have seen the indices that in terms of life expectancy and sex ratios, world is doing well. It's almost at 96. It's at 96%. The worst index is political empowerment. It is 22.5%. Women have been excluded from all decision making in the world. That is what it means. Till this is fixed, we cannot really have a world that is, equal, where women are treated as well as they should be. Now, if we look at regional performances, Central Asia is, you can see this. If you see our region, Southern Asia, economic participation and opportunity is where we are actually lagging, along with political empowerment. We have had a fairly detailed discussion in one of the previous discussions about women participation in labor. If we want to take a look at that, to understand as to why actually we have lower participation of women, what levels of participation of women are there in the workforce in our own country. Now, in terms of the regional differences, our own region, like I said, only Maldives and Pakistan are worse than us. Everybody else is doing better. Bangladesh is better than us, Nepal is better than us, Sri Lanka is better than us, Bhutan is better than us. Pakistan is in a terrible state, they're at 145th. Only one country is worse than them. Now, this is another thing I want you to take a look at. Generally, we think we are better than the world in practically everything. This is sub-Saharan Africa. We are supposed to be much better than them in terms of our economic opportunities, in terms of our knowledge base, in terms of practically everything. But all of them, all these countries are doing better than India in terms of gender gap. Namibia, South Africa, all these countries. See, even a country like Rwanda, which was actually torn apart by a variety of factors. They had a genocide and everything. Even they're doing better than us. Now, looking at our own country, if we see each index and see how we are doing on that particular index, how do we rank? Now, in global gender gap, like I said, we are 129th. Last year, we were 127th. So, we have dropped by 2 ranks. We have gotten worse. We have not improved. Now, economic participation and opportunity, we are 142nd. Almost at the bottom of the world. Educational attainment, we are 112th. Last year, we were actually better. Again, we have dropped. Last year, we were actually at 26th. This time, we have come to 112th. Huge cause for concern. Health and survival, we continue to be the same at 142nd. That's because our programs are actually being implemented quite well at the grassroots level. Political empowerment, again, we were in the 59th place in 2023. That's just last year. This year, we are down to 65th. Now, if we see in a little more detail where we are losing out, we'll see that economic participation and opportunity, Labor workforce participation, we are 134th. Wage inequality, equality, we are 120th. Estimated income earned, 135th. Practically everywhere, we are at the bottom of the world. Now, educational attainment, enrollment in secondary education, we are the first. So, at least this part of it, we can actually do well in the years to come. Now, again, when we see health and survival, you see that sex ratio at birth, which has been a cause of concern for the country. We have had female infanticide, and we have had laws passed to stop female infanticide. We are still at 138th. Life expectancy, it's 130th again. Political empowerment, we are overall 65th, but women in parliament, 117. Women in ministerial positions, 132. Years with female head of state in the last 50 years, we are 10th. That's primarily because we had Indira Gandhi as a prime minister. So, as time goes by, we are going to lose out that advantage, because they're going to count only the last 50 years. Somewhere or the other, we're going to go out of that. Now, what are the future challenges and how do we meet them? Higher secondary and college education has been a consistent problem, but secondary education, we have done well. While some states report higher enrollment rates of girls in higher secondary education, concerns are rising about boys dropping out. Now, as unemployment becomes a problem, more children will drop out of school, and that is what we are actually witnessing. More children will be forced to supplement family income much earlier than what we'd expect them to. Now, STEM education, women make up only 42.5%. We want that to go up. Adult literacy rates, one of the problems with this is we still have only 2011 census data. So, once the census is done, much of this will change, because this doesn't reflect the work that has been done over more than a decade. Now, what are the recommendations that have been made to address the problem? Improving school infrastructure. We already had we just discussed about how this actually has an impact. Increasing female teacher presence, a much needed thing. Enhanced sanitation facilities. Children have days during which they need better sanitation. They actually need support from the state even. It is done by a lot of private schools. Maybe it's time the state also did that. Now, there should be a focus on foundational literacy, strengthen foundational literacy programs. Unless children start off with education, how will they actually go to secondary state or the tertiary state? So, this was about the gender gap report, and it portrays the country in actually a very, very bad state. Only index where we have done well is the enrollment of children in the secondary education state. Other than that, practically everywhere else we have not done well. And that actually shows us the kind of, it's a fight against patriarchy, and unless we handle these issues, we'll continue seeing violence against women, we'll continue seeing women leading a near subhuman life in many, many areas of the country, which actually goes against our cultural ethos. As our cultural ethos is that we actually tend to respect women. We are one of the few cultures that actually has a very large number of deities who are worshipped. I mean, all our goddesses are women. So, in that culture, to have a situation where women are not treated well is deeply problematic. Now, government is considering a 50,000 crore scheme for agricultural reforms. Now, agriculture is going to be a much more important area than we are seeing right now, especially with climate change that's going to hit us all very badly. And also there are two reasons why agriculture is an important sector. One, there is the population growth that's not going to even out for a few more decades. And two, there's going to be climate change. Now, look at it like this. By the year 2050, the world will be producing only 53% of the food required for the entire population of the world. So, agricultural reforms and a focus on agriculture is actually necessary for human survival and needed for the country. Now, what is the government proposing? what is actually the status of farmers in the country? Let's take a look at that. Now, the central government is considering a scheme with an outlay of 50,000 crores to incentivize states to adopt agricultural reforms. Now, what are the problems faced by agriculture sector in India? Let us look at the problems, then we'll try and understand how that can be solved and what can be done about that. What we can look at it as pre-harvest and post-harvest problems. If you see pre-harvest, there is a problem in terms of access to credit and finance. Most of our farmers are small farmers, so they have a problem in accessing loans. They struggle to get affordable loans, and that's where you have the problem of money lenders and others. Then you have the whole debt trap happening. We'll discuss that as well. That limits their ability to buy modern equipment, quality seeds, fertilizers, which eventually affects the productivity of the crops, productivity of the farms. Now, the other problem is small holdings, small land holdings. Over a period of time, our agricultural holdings have been splintered from generation to generation. Remember, 1947, there were only 300 million people. Now, there are 1.42 billion people. Now, most of the growth has happened in the rural areas, which means that all the farms have become smaller, have been divided over a period of 75 years, and they become even smaller than they were. Now, what was the state of agriculture in 1947? At the time of independence, we were a semi-feudal country with tenure arrangements that were completely against the farmers. And the ownership and control of the land was concentrated in the hands of a few landlords, and there were a few intermediaries who held land. That has changed over a period of time. Now, the agricultural resources in India were gradually impoverished because it was not possible to create. We never ended up with cooperative land holdings or anything like that. And this is also part of the problem that we have today, and this continues to have an impact on this. Now, what are the other problems that we have with agriculture? Outdated farming practices. You have very small farms. People really can't innovate. You can't bring in new technologies. You can't bring in new ideas. Now, traditional methods are used. People are also resistant to change, especially if somebody is spending an entire lifetime in a particular work. They'd like to think that they know enough about that, so they're resistant to change. Now, farmers also have limited access to modern technologies and research. They also don't have enough information. Remember, there are always worse rates of literacy as we go into the rural parts of the country. Further you move away from cities, fewer people are educated. Also, those who are in agriculture tend to be the least educated people in the country. It's just the way our social system is structured. Generally, educated people don't get into farms, except a few who have started to use, but that's again a slightly small category. Now, there is water scarcity and irrigation. This is another area of problems. We are all dependent on monsoons. You have a good monsoon, there will be a good crop, and if otherwise there are droughts. People actually, a minor change in the monsoon pattern by a few days has enormous impact. If there, like for example, takes a crop like groundnut. If there is too much water when groundnut is planted, the plant is actually, the nuts are under the ground and they rot away. If there isn't any rain at all, you can't really get it out of the soil because they have to be plucked out by hand. And if the soil is not moist, it can't be taken out. Again, they will rot away. So, it's a very, very delicate thing. We are totally dependent on monsoons. Now, the other problem is irrigation and water management is crucial, and water level across the country is falling. We had a discussion about this in one of our previous lectures. There are areas in the country where, say, 40 years ago, water was at 30 feet. Now, it's anywhere from 1500 to 2000 feet. So, this continues to be a problem. Soil degradation, erosion is another problem. Use of chemical pesticides over several decades has irreplaceably damaged the quality of soils in the country. Now, there is inadequate agricultural infrastructure. Now, this is something that has been talked of a lot, that there aren't enough cold chains. You want cold chain storages across the country. When products come out, they can be stored, then they can be sold when they are needed. You need good roads. There aren't enough good roads. That is the other problem. Now, there are also post-harvest losses because of this reason. Now, the other problem is market volatility and price fluctuations. Farmers face a lot of problems due to unstable prices. For example, take this right now. Right now, potatoes are about 40 to 50 rupees per kilo. But when the farmers sold it, they were getting about 5 to 7 rupees per kilo. They are not actually, even though the prices went up, there has been a potato blight and the farms have been damaged and crops have been damaged, because of which prices have gone up. But the farmers have not benefited from that. That is one of the problems. Now, other problem is climate change and natural disaster, unpredictable weather. This is going to be a much bigger problem, and this is where a role of organizations like ICAR comes into play, where they are developing crops that can withstand climate change. Now, there are also policy related issues. A lack of farmers' empowerment. Farmers generally lack a voice in the country. Their inputs have not been taken in when it comes to actually creating policies. Now, like I said, these are just to round up. There is dependence on monsoon. That's a problem. The lack of permanent means of irrigation, that is there everywhere. There's a deficiency of finance, convention outlook of farmers, land fragmentation, lack of access to quality seeds, soil degradation, nutrient depletion. So those are the problems. Now, if we see agricultural holdings, how they have changed over the past several decades, between 2005 and 6, 2015 and 16, we'll see that the number of marginal farmers has gone up from 63% to 69%. Small farmers has come down from 34 to 18%. Bigger farmers has come down from 33 to 14%, which is to say more farms have been, this is a small period of time, this is just a 10-year period. In just a 10-year period, you will see that the size of land holdings has fallen. Now, India has more farm laborers than farmers. Now, if you will see in 1951, there were 6.9% people who were cultivators and 27.3% of people who were agricultural laborers. Right now, 6.9 million people who were cultivators and 27.3 million people who were agricultural laborers. In 2011, it is 118.8 in terms of cultivators, 144.3 in terms of agricultural laborers. Now, remember, the number of farms doesn't grow. The land that is available continues to be the same. We are not expanding our borders as a country. It's the same country always. So, this is a deep cause of concern. Now, there are pests, diseases and crop damage. This is another problem. Lack of mechanization and technological advancement. This is again very deeply related to the idea of land holdings. If the land holdings are very small, you cannot have any mechanization and technological advancement. One way out would be to have some kind of farming cooperatives or something, but that idea has never really taken off in the country. Lack of organized agricultural marketing systems. This has been a huge problem. There have been laws, there have been protests, so that has never been sorted out in the country. Right now, it's in the hands of a few people who run the mandis. Then there is inadequate transport. Now, there is falling investment in agriculture over a period of time. Now, between private, public and total, you will see between the year 2012 and 2019, there was 10%, just under 10% in, say 9% in the year 2012. Right now, it has fallen to about 7% in 2019. So, the percentage of investment that is happening in agriculture is also falling. This is also a problem. Now, one of the biggest problems, like I said, when we were discussing farmers is their lack of access to financing, their lack of access to loans, the fact that farmers actually can't go to banks and get loans, and that in turn leads them into a cycle of debt and further poverty. Most of the farmers in the country are debt ridden. Now, if you'll see, in 2003, 49% of the agricultural households were indebted. By 2019, it has gone up to 50%, but more importantly, the outstanding amount in 2003 was 12,585 crores. By 2019, the amount of money that farmers had to repay has gone up to 74,121 crores. Now, if we'll see, even the agriculture income that the farmers have over a period of time, after everything, that has also fallen. Now, percentage of agricultural households who actually have debts across the country, if you'll see, 50% of agricultural households in the country are indebted. They all have loans. And if you go towards states like Andhra Pradesh and Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, 91.7% of the agricultural households have loans in Telangana, and 93.2% of agricultural households have loans in Andhra Pradesh. And if you'll see as what is the monthly household income of these households, it is 10,000 rupees, 10,480 in Andhra Pradesh, 9,403 in Telangana. And we'll see that across the country, most of the households, their agricultural income is very, very low. Highest is as expected in Punjab, which is 26,000 rupees, 26,701 rupees. Even there, 54.4% of the people who are farmers have loans. So, one of the biggest problems in agriculture is that farmers have loans and their monthly incomes are very, very low. How much does a farmer earn? It's as low as 5,000 rupees in Odisha per month. And if we take the national average, it's a mere 10,218 rupees for the entire country, which is actually a very small sum of money when you consider that's an entire household, probably at least 4 people. So that's not a lot of money. Now, what is the proposal by NITI Aayog against this background? Because we started off with the idea that NITI Aayog has said we'll spend 50,000 crores to ensure agricultural reforms happen in the country. What is the NITI Aayog proposal? NITI Aayog is saying, after nearly 3 years after repealing the 3 farm acts that were supposed to be passed in 2021, there's a new scheme now that says that we'll have the states adopt the changes that we want to and incentivize them. The incentive will provide central funding for states to implement reforms in agriculture marketing, contract farming and land leasing. So, these are the 3 areas where the state is trying to create changes. And the idea for this scheme was presented to the Prime Minister by the NITI Aayog, and this was based on a presentation called Amrit Kal, Mobilizing the Nation to Sustain Fast Growth. So, this was the presentation out of which this idea has been born. And various reform measures are under consideration. What are the other reform measures? Passing the long pending seed bill and increasing public investment in agriculture to 5% of agriculture gross value addition. Proposal actually revisits an idea that was proposed by the 15th Finance Commission in 2021, which recommended performance-based incentives to states. So, this is actually again reviving that old idea. Now, states could receive financial rewards for 3 things. Model Agricultural Produce and Livestock Marketing Act, they implement parts of that. The Model Agricultural Produce and Livestock Contracting Act of 2018, they implement parts of it. They'll have incentives for that. And the Model Agricultural Land Leasing Act, of 2016. If they implement parts of it, they'll have incentives for that. Now, the 15th Finance Commission had said reforms are essential to liberalize agriculture markets, promote competition, and attract private sector investment. However, the central government passed the 3 farm laws in 2020, and the Commission revised its recommendations. The Commission has now given 4 recommendations. They are saying that there will be 4 areas which can be taken care of through performance-based incentives. Land lease reforms, again from the 3 acts that were there. Sustainable water use in agriculture, this is a necessity. Then export promotion and contribution to Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, they have proposed that 45,000 crores was the initial proposal, but probably it's going to be 50,000 crores. So, this was about the ideas that have been proposed and how agricultural reforms can be done in the country by incentivizing the states. And as you can see, the status of the farmers is actually quite bleak, even when we are doing quite well in terms of agricultural productivity. So, that was that for this episode. I hope it was useful, and best of luck with your preparation. Thank you.